Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, a show for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. Each week, we bring you real-life stories and expert insights to help you create a kinder, more compassionate relationship with yourself. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, a physician with over 2 decades of experience blending Eastern and Western well-being practices. As the founder of Radiant Living Institute, I'm here to help you reconnect with your own inner radiance. Remember, small changes make a large impact, and it all starts here. Please note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Essential Self-Care Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming back to the show, Jara Clark. Jara is a certified personal trainer. She is a transformation speaker, author, and the founder of Fit Goddess Tribe, where she helps individuals realize that fitness is 100% mental and that growth through fitness can be an all-encompassing transformation of the mind, body, and spirit. Jara was on the show a few weeks ago, sharing a bit more of her personal self-care journey. Amazing episode with lots of gems of wisdom. So if you did not listen to that, then definitely go back to that episode after you listen to this one.
That's right.
Today, however, Jara and I are going to explore fitness as a tool for self-care, specifically strength training and yoga. Welcome to the show, Jara.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to have you back. We had such a great conversation last time, and I'm excited to see where our conversation goes today. So let's get started. So in the last episode that you were on, you were sharing a bit of your self-care journey. I was just sharing with you, that conversation went all sorts of places that I wasn't expecting, which is so great, which is so often how these conversations go, which is one of the reasons that I love hosting this show and the opportunity to speak to incredible people like you. And so on that self-care journey that you were sharing with us, we had actually just gotten to the point where you had come across strength training as a modality for your own self-care. And now, years later, I'm assuming it's been a few years now. Yeah. Okay, years later. Years later, now you are the founder of your own company called Fit Goddess Tribe, and where you are, among other things, because you're doing a lot of things with Fit Goddess Tribe, but among other things, 2 specific modalities that you are using and guiding people to use in their own lives are strength training and yoga. And specifically those as a hand-in-hand strength training and yoga. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? Maybe first sharing a little bit about the modalities themselves, and then specifically what's so powerful or beneficial about tying them together hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so strength training, right? We always think of just muscles, but we don't really know. We don't do a deep dive about what the muscles do, how they interact, how they grow, and their overall function. So when my body started to transform, that's when I was like, okay, well, let's study this more. Like, what's happening underneath the surface that I can't see? And that allowed me to teach my clients, well, look, this is what you're looking for. Stop looking for a difference in aesthetic, right? Look for the fact that you can breathe better. Look for the fact that your heart rate is now lower. Look for the fact that you're producing insulin more. You can ask your doctor about those things. Bigger muscles means denser bones as well, which means we're less worried about osteoporosis later in life. There's just so many benefits to strength training. And then because I'm a Black woman and, we're built bottom heavy. So I started learning about that because, as women, we get dissected so much. And I'm like, well, what if I told you that building strength in your legs actually builds your brain? What if I told you that squatting helps you change the brain matter? So whatever you used to think can now create new synapses and now you can think differently. But that's putting together what the muscles are actually doing versus what we see happen underneath the skin, So it was it got really exciting because now we've got all these neuroscientists that are like, oh, did you know this and this and this? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes.
Absolutely. And I forgot to mention in Jara's intro that Jara has a degree in psychology as well. So as she's diving into this neuroscience and this connection between the body and the brain, she's really drawing from
personal background.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a thing. Our brain is where we reside. So making our home clean and like a playground has been a thing, a passion of mine that I learned to attach to fitness. But then later, as I'm getting my clients stronger, uh, we start to worry about stiffness. So that's where yoga comes in, because that teaches us about why we stretch the muscles, how to release. And again, this is where the energies come back in, because now we realize, oh, you've been holding trauma in this area, which is why you can't actually do this squat, this lunge, this whatever. And then through yoga, we can stretch and strengthen and breathe really deep to allow for space for the muscles to actually do what they're meant to do. And then with that release of stress and that change of energy, now we're able to like lead happier, healthier lives. And then I will say yoga taught me more about anatomy, so where the muscles are, more about this skeletal structure, more about the lymphatic system, more about the parasympathetic system, which I kind of remember from psychology. But now it's like bringing it to life. Like, okay, this and this do these things. And if you eat right, what I say in the last episode, eat, sleep, and exercise, this combination of doing these things while stretching and strengthening changes everything on a molecular level, even to where it's really exciting about what kind of person you can curate for yourself, depending on where you see yourself going.
Yeah, goodness, that's so beautiful. There's so many things in what you shared. My mind is just like so many things coming to my mind to reflect on. So yeah, really looking at that combination of strengthening and stretching. And you mentioned so many benefits to the physical body on multiple levels, right? Working with the muscles and then also looking at how that affects how you're breathing, how, your heart rate, your blood pressure, like all of those things, glucose metabolism, your stress response with the parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetic nervous system, right? All of that. One of the things, there were so many things that came to my mind. One of the things that came to my mind was in yoga philosophy. So, specifically, it sounds like with your clients focusing on the physical aspects of strength training and stretching.
Right.
With the awareness of all these different levels that it affects, that they see benefits in, right? And seeing that, I'm sure they're telling you about these benefits as well. So you're directly seeing that as well. And one of the things that it made me think of, though, was this concept that we talk about in yoga, which is called koshas, which is different sort of energy layers. So we talk about like the physical body, the mental body, the energetic body, the subtle sort of breath body. And just one thing that we talk about is if you affect or do something to affect one of those layers, it affects all of those layers.
Absolutely.
And so that's what, just as you were sharing it with me, I love it, because this is how I look at and approach yoga and mind body practices and the system of Ayurveda, like all of these things that I've studied. My mind just naturally goes to all the different layers, just like you've been sharing too, of like, okay, what does the Western science say about this, and what does it say in these ancient texts, and bringing it all together on that way. And so I just think that's it's I think it's interesting to know that if you start somewhere, you're going to notice benefits, right? So if you start on the physical level, you're going to see benefits on different aspects of your physical body, on different aspects of your mental, emotional, all of those sort of things. If you start with the mental, maybe meditation or, things like that. Or if you start on the breath, like with breath work, right? But basically, you start somewhere and you're going to notice an impact different in the different layers, both on an energetic basis, right? If you're like, I don't know what energies are, and I don't believe in that. That's fine too, because it's also on the scientific level of
Correct.
affecting different systems within your body, and that's what's really neat. And what I really enjoy, one of the many things I really enjoy about chatting with you, Jara, is having these conversations where we can talk about it on many of these different layers and levels. Before we go on, I'm excited to share something that could really make a positive impact on your life. Need a way to improve focus and reduce stress? Inner Radiance Through Meditation is a self-paced audio program that guides you through the what, why, and how of meditation. With 3 audio lessons, including guided meditations, you'll learn how to overcome common obstacles, understand the science of meditation, and start a home practice that fits your life. Ready to find peace amidst the chaos? Head over to radiantlivinginstitute.com to access this course and start your journey to inner calm today. I hope you found that helpful. If you're ready to explore this more, check out the link in the show notes below. Now, let's jump back into today's episode. I'm curious because you've worked with many clients now using this combination of kind of getting back to the focus of our conversation for today, using this combination of strength training and the physical practices of yoga with stretching, as well as it sounds like you've been incorporating some breathing into that stretching as
Absolutely.
well. And you talked about many of the benefits on we've talked about many of the benefits on sort of a larger scale, sort of intellectual level. I'm curious if you could share some sort of direct results that you've seen in some of your clients. Like, what sort of impact have you seen either in yourself or your clients?
Ooh, so I carry around this little book, and I have at least 2 stories from some of my clients, and I would just look and see so I don't. All right. So JAR's principles and practices have a transformative power. They offer a profound sense of balance and grounding, a vital compass in the chaos. Her ability to seamlessly integrate culture, identity, and professional strategy and overall overall well-being is, in my eyes, a true embodiment of holistic health and healing. Um, this is one of my clients that it was interesting. I'm a mental health advocate as well. So some of my clients, we don't do anything physical at all. We just have a conversation. I don't want you to breathe. I just want you to talk. And then that was this one. And from our conversation, we were able to really unlock some of the beliefs that come from society, from the environment that you put yourself in, or the environment that you grow up in, because we're conditioned between school, parents, friends to believe that we are a certain thing, which we may or may not be depending on our internal compass. And this particular client, I think we were able to work for about 6 months, after which she was able to dismantle a lot of her relationship or her negative relationship with her mother. Because we love our mothers, but sometimes it's not that they're undeserving of love, but the way that we show it has to change. And that can be very hard because we're taught to think so highly of our mothers, and as we should. But again, there's comes a self-preservation that has to happen. And when it's not, then you can really feel the effects in such a way like my client was, where she was just like a child, acting out, lashing out, crying out for these things that unfortunately just were unavailable to her, and they weren't going to be available to her ever unless, change happens. But it's safer to say a pattern is a pattern. But outside of the mental relief, everybody gets better sleep. That's my favorite one, is that everybody gets more sleep. In a world that's so busy, that is pushing productivity, we all must be doing something and I struggle with this one too. I I tell my friends, "Oh, I took rest." And they're like, "Oh my God, thank God." But rest is where we grow. Rest is where the muscles develop. Rest is where the brain is able to let go and process a lot of these things. And I think that out of all of my clients is my favorite thing that they get from me is more rest.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, sleep is one of those things that's so important. And I think we don't talk about it enough. And yet so many people struggle with sleep too, especially these
Absolutely.
days. And I have found, certainly, I've always been big into exercising regularly and consistently. But I have found that sort of the more regular that I am, and certain types of exercise and things like that, that I do sleep better, right? And so that's interesting. And the client example that you just shared too is interesting, that you share that you were really only working on the mental, through conversation with that client, just because, again, going back to, while in this conversation we've been focusing on the strength training and yoga, how I mentioned that there's all these different layers and you work on one and it affects others. Another example of that is what you had alluded to earlier. You mentioned to it briefly earlier when you talked about trauma being stuck in different parts of your body. And I know that a book that has been pivotal for you, that you've shared with me, is a book that I've read also, which is just an incredible book about how the body holds on to trauma, as the body keeps the score.
Yes.
If anyone who's listening is interested in diving deeper into that, that is a fantastic book. And so it's just, I say, like, we all have had some kind of trauma. Maybe we haven't all, gone to, war in the very literal sense.
Right.
But we all have things that our body has responded to or does respond to in as trauma. And so that trauma can get held, research is showing that trauma can get held onto in your body. And so a powerful way to work through that is also through the body.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're right. It's such an enlightening book, but it's also scary, because then it puts a different set of visors on, because now when you don't know something, it's easy to call it something else. Mm-hmm. But when you do know that it could be something else, now you start to look and analyze people differently. Especially as a practitioner, now you're trying to think of different ways to help, and you're like, oh, well, maybe it's not even any of the things that you're trying. Maybe it's the way that you're thinking. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're actually suffering from brain damage from all these years of drinking sodas, having too much sugar, sitting too long, and now your brain itself can't function to give you the willpower to move forward. So now we have to first address that issue, so that your brain can operate properly, and then we can tackle all of the other things.
Yeah, I think it's a really important lens. I mean, I know you said kind of like when you first start to look at it, it can be almost scary, like, oh my goodness, this is a whole other lens to, looking at things from, especially when you're working with clients. I think it's a really important lens, though, and I love meeting other practitioners who take that sort of trauma-informed approach, as well as I do with my clients as well. Because another thing is having that lens, having that approach, working with a trauma-informed practitioner is really important, because a lot of these practices, even if you think, oh, I'm using quotes here for anyone who's watching the YouTube. If you're just listening, I'm using quotes here of, just strength training or just doing stretching, right? And the reason I'm using quotes there is because, just like we said, our body can hold on to a lot of trauma. And so when you start to work with the physical body to release that, sometimes unexpected emotions or memories can come up. And that's why it's so important to have someone who can guide you through some of those processes and experiences if or when they arise. So I think it's a really important lens to look through. And so I'm glad that there's more and more folks such as yourself and myself who are really paying attention to that.
Absolutely.
Now, actually, I have two questions for you as we start to wrap up. So one question is, if someone is in, we've shared a lot of nuggets in terms of how people can get started. We've talked about sort of different layers, different levels to work at. We've talked about, just start somewhere. You start somewhere, it affects other layers and levels of your well-being. We also talked about strength training and yoga and how those can go hand in hand, specifically, strengthening and stretching. So what I wanted to do, part of this show, especially when I bring on experts as yourself, is that I want to be able to give our listeners some takeaways that they can very easily and practically begin to integrate into their daily life. So if someone is listening and they're like, I know, Jara and Dr. Ujmani, you both talked about a lot of different things, but I really do want to give it a go to try some strength training and stretching. Where would you recommend that they start? How would you recommend they get started?
Oh, awesome. Your body is the greatest weight that you have. Adding weights only adds pressure, which is great, but form is what matters most. So, body weight training, simple stretches, like if you sit up in the bed, don't rush out of bed. Lay there for a moment. Take a couple deep breaths. Really enjoy the fact that there's lungs that fill your breath. Get excited about the fact that you get to do whatever it is on your long laundry list of things to do today, and then start your day. Maybe roll your wrists, roll your neck. You know, don't overthink it. Your body is so in tune, its legit whole purpose is to keep you alive. So when we listen to our bodies differently, when we sit with ourselves and really listen to what our body's trying to tell us, we can communicate with ourselves a whole lot better. So to answer your question is just tune in. Take time to just be like, I'm here.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. And what a great way, really practical takeaway. Like, yeah, when you wake up in the morning, take your time, listen to your body as you're getting up, take a few deep breaths. And, taking the few deep breaths, again, continuing with this theme of like stretching and strengthening. Yes, taking a few deep breaths is great, right? Because, the oxygenation, like all that stuff, right?
Right.
Taking big deep breaths is good. Is good to do for many reasons. But one of those, continuing with today's theme, is don't underestimate like the stretch that you're getting through expanding your lungs fully and then allowing them to contract naturally as you exhale. Like all of those little muscles that are supporting your, the rib cage stretch, all of those muscle fibers stretch, and
fascia that is legit all over your body.
Right. Your back, right? Like all of that just through taking a few deep breaths, right? And then take it a little further and see what else, do you need to do some wrist rolls, some ankle rolls, maybe roll your neck around a little bit, right? So I love that you said, don't overthink it. Something that you had said on the previous episode that you were a guest on was to make things as easy as possible, right? Remove any obstacles that are going to keep you from taking that very first step. Absolutely. So I hope that this tip for our listeners helps with that. Now, my next question, my second to last question, is that we are sitting here together in the podcast studio and I'm looking over across the table and I see your book that you published.
Oh, yeah.
And so can you just hold it up for those who are watching on YouTube so they can see the book? And can you just tell us briefly what it's about and where people can find it?
Oh, absolutely. So this is 31 different healthier smoothies to a healthier you. My son was the one that inspired me. He made them smoothies their entire life. I used to joke when they were little, if you want a quiet and intelligent child, give them a smoothie, right? Because nutrient dense, it does all the things. And then they're always so happy because of how the berries and such react with the body naturally. And one of my clients helped me break this word down. I used to, as a fitness instructor, tell people to breathe. And she said, well, what does that mean exactly? So the book stands for Build Resiliency Every Day and Think Health Eternally.
I love that. Can you say it again?
Of course. Build resiliency every day and think health eternally. So when you take a breath, that's what you're doing. You're building resiliency every day and you're thinking health eternally. Now, this book is available on Amazon. On my website, I have a PayHip if you want to download it digitally, because I know some people like that modality better. But again, 31 different smoothies. I used to be a sugar addict, so this was my way to switch. Processed sugar, no. Natural sugar, yes. You can have, respectfully to everybody's dietary needs, you can have more natural sugar than you can processed
Mhm.
sugar. And it's so beneficial. 2 bananas will give you enough energy for a 90-minute workout. Not to mention the potassium that's in it will help rejuvenate lots of things in your body. Berries, my son and I are reading this book, Change Your Mind, Change Your Body, which talks about blueberries being called brain berries because they're the antioxidant of health for your brain. So many of those things are in this book, and I think it's so phenomenal because for people that have a smaller palate, they haven't tasted a lot of things. This is a very easy way to start to get the benefits without the aversion of, oh my God, I've never tasted these things.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I will include that link in the show notes.
Awesome.
Can you also share with folks where they can learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. We are on all social media platforms as Fit Goddess Tribe or Fit Goddess Tribe Mindset, which I believe is on YouTube. And then definitely check us out on LinkedIn. We drop a lot of gems in terms of the relation to our electromagnetic field that the heart creates, or why squatting is really, really powerful and impactful for building a strong brain, and how building a strong brain can actually give you a better life.
Awesome. I will include all those links in the show notes. Thank you again for being here today, Jara.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I know you have so many choices for how to spend your time, so I thank you for being here today with Essential Self-Care. As a gift, download your free workbook, 6 simple yet powerful steps to create your radiant life at radiantlivinginstitute.com and start your journey to a more radiant you.